I know that we're going to eventually make a mistake. I want to make sure that we try to figure out how to make as few mistakes as possible, but I care more about what we do when we make a mistake. And I think that's where a lot of management companies drop the ball. A client will be upset, even if we didn't make a mistake. They think that something happened. Something didn't go as they had expected.
It's
right.
Perception.
There's a perception that we didn't meet their expectations. And so what do we do about that when they reach out? And a lot of management companies drop the ball. We have some of my best clients came from mild to major screw up on our part. And the reason they became our best clients is because when something happened, we were put to the test and we did the right thing and we passed the test. And that built the level of trust. Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Klein, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Success Podcast with Mark Brower, the Property Management Aid Station. And we've got a couple of good topics for you. We're going to start. We're just going to jump right in. Mark and I were talking about some of the complications that people introduce into their business that actually you think it's going to provide some advantage for your business, but it really doesn't. It winds up really setting you back and setting you in the opposite direction. So the theme for today is keeping things as simple as possible, yet experiencing as much benefit out of whatever you implement as possible.
And we promise that by the end of this podcast, you'll be making millions of dollars by doing less work.
I'm on board with that. Now, we didn't tell you what time frame, how long it's going to take.
Yeah. Listen to all the episodes.
Yeah.
So can I share a quick story?
Let's do it.
Okay. So I've mentioned this on other recordings we've done. I was in Entrepreneur Organization for a number of years in the Accelerator Group. Highly recommend it for businesses under $1 million. The whole goal of the whole organization is to get you over $1 million as fast as possible. And one of the aspects of this group is I had a monthly accountability group, and we would meet 6 or 7 of us with a mentor that had a more successful, larger business. And one of these mentors was a guy named Dave Berg, super successful guy, owns a company here in Arizona called Redirect Health. Really smart dude, kind of eclectic. And one time he held up a large bolt, like think of an industrial grade bolt, like you're bolting something, like 2 big pieces of metal together. It was long, it was like 8 inches long, and he said, and there were nuts, that can thread onto the bolt. It was just a helpful visual. And he said, and the nuts, he had like 4 nuts of different color, 5 nuts of different color. And he said, I can combine these nuts on this bolt. If there's 4 of them, how many different combinations can I combine these nuts on the bolt? What do you think the answer to that is?
I know it's more than 16. 4 times 16.
It is 16.
9.
If there's 4 bolts, it's 16. If there's 5 bolts, how many combinations are there? 32.
I'm guessing 32.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every single time you add another bolt, the number doubles, right? Is that right?
I don't know. Right? I feel like we're off.
No. We're off. It's
like we're off by.
It's like 4 factorial, right? It's like 4 times 3 times 2 times. Then it's like 5 times 4. Okay. By the time you got to 5 or 6 bolts, it's like 100,000 combinations. It's ridiculous. I don't know. So, somebody in the comments watching this, please tell me how stupid I am.
Set us straight, would you?
Give me the right math. But the principle is true that the fewer variables you have in any system, it is every time you add another variable to a system, it gets way more complex. And we all know this in property management. This is why we know that eventually, once we do property management long enough, in the beginning we're like saying yes to everybody and trying to meet their personalized needs, and we realize, whoa, this isn't scalable, this is a really bad idea, and then we standardize our model, and then we start saying, no, we don't do it that way, you have to do it our way, right? Because we know eventually you take a complex property management model and apply it to 20 properties, okay, I can do this. I'm a fixer. I can do this. I can meet each individual needs. You apply it to 200 properties, and it's just absolute chaos. And so simplicity is absolutely critical for a number of reasons. Tony, what are those reasons?
Well, obviously, we want to be able to control the outcome. I think the first thing is anytime we're in business, we want to make a profit, but the way you make a profit is to make it predictable. And you've got to be able to take what you're doing and layer on a certain number of steps that brings you to a predictable outcome. And so that's certainly one of the things that we want to look at is how predictable is it? The second thing is how scalable is it? And then the third thing is how trainable is it? I think we need to be able to look at all three of those factors when we're trying to build out a business that, again, we're trying to move people from being in the day-to-day and running their business and doing all the things that has to be done every day to being somebody that owns a business and has people that work their system for them for a predictable outcome.
Okay, I want to tell another story. I was listening to a podcast a few months ago, and the guy talked about this principle of, he was playing Legos with his son, like the big blocky Legos, and they were going to build a bridge. And so the son started with this side of the bridge, and the dad started with this side of the bridge. They were going to meet in the middle. And as they started building toward the middle, they realized, oh, we're at a different level. And the son and the dad said, hey, how are we going to fix this? And the son did something unusual, which illustrated a point. The son, instead of adding something to the bridge to make it connect, he took a piece off of this side of the bridge and lowered it down, and then they connected. And the reason this was so impactful for this guy giving this podcast is, he says, because he studies like efficiency, and he studies how systems work and how they operate efficiently. And he says the human brain is wired to solve problems by addition. But very, very often, the best system can be engineered by reducing and subtracting.
I really love that. One of the things that, and I'm not as good at remembering specific quotes by specific authors and what page number you read it on like you are, which is just a skill set that just blows my mind. I love having somebody like you around to help me remember who said what, because it just all goes into a melting pot for me. But I was listening to an audiobook while I was on a run, and it was, they were talking about the difference between American artists and European artists. And American artists start with a blank canvas, and they keep adding stuff to it until they're like, that's art. And the European artists would start with like a block of marble, and they would take away everything that wasn't art, and you would be left with what is perfect. They took away everything that didn't add something to the art. And I think about that all the time when we're trying to design systems, when we're designing coaching programs, when we're working on what is the deliverable. I don't need to keep adding things. I need to take away things until if I took away one more thing, that it would somehow ruin it.
How can I make my property management website better by taking stuff away? How can I make my owner onboarding experience better by removing unnecessary communication, by removing unnecessary distractions, by removing things that aren't relevant in the moment? How can I take my maintenance process and remove two or three, or combine two or three things into one? I remember, Tony, I was telling you before we started, I had my monthly managers planning meeting today, and one of my property managers said, we were going around the room, we're talking about our focus and our objectives, and like, does anybody have like something that's a headline for the month? And one of the property managers said, well, I really like that we moved to Lead Simple Inbox. Shout out to Jordan and CRISPR Compass for building a fantastic product. We're not being endorsed. We didn't get paid to say that, but I use Lead Simple. She's like, I love that we moved to Lead Simple Inbox, because before we had Help Scout for our inbox. And now we have Lead Simple, which we were already using for other things. And now we've just reduced our tech stack by one. And that's a win.
Yeah. I'll tell a story too then. So it's about a coaching client that I was talking with this last week, and they were talking about their owner onboarding. And you were just mentioning, how can I make it simpler by taking something away? And we were talking about, they wanted to, so there's two camps with when you get a property management agreement signed. The first one is, I want to make it as easy as possible for people to say yes. So I'm going to send them just our basic agreement, and then I'm going to run around and chase them down for all the additional information. I'm going to send them 3 or 4 more emails about, well, now I need a W-9, and now I need your HOA docs if it's an HOA, and now I need, can you confirm the description? Is this held title? I want to confirm it was in a, that this is held, you held title in an LLC, and all of these different things. So the first one is, let's just get the agreement signed and make it as easy as possible for people to say yes. And then we'll figure out how to get the rest of the information. The other camp is, I want to collect all that information up front so that I can prepare the documents as professionally as possible to make it so that I have all the information I'm going to need to professionally and legally manage this property moving forward. And, if we flipped a coin, I could argue either side. So it's like, I have my favorite, but you could argue either side. But what we were trying to figure out how to do was, what they were doing was they wanted to just get the agreement signed, and then they would chase the owner down for all of this other information, making sure that the property had proper insurance on it, making sure we got the W-9, and all of these different things that they would ask. And so we started looking at, what's the user experience? What is the best user experience when I bring somebody in? And for most owners, when they sign with a property management company, they feel like, I've been looking, I've found the right one, I've hired them, I'm a little nervous, but I'm putting my trust into them that they're doing the right thing, that I'm hiring the right people. And I check that box, and I sigh a little bit of a sigh of relief that it's done. Now I'm replacing that task that I'm looking for somebody with. Now I have a little anxiety. Are they going to actually be the right one? Are they going to fulfill all the promises that they made? And then immediately after signing my management agreement, I'm now getting hit with, oh, I need this. And then we check the box in Lead Simple, and then it triggers the next task. And it's like, oh, we'll send another email and ask for this. And so, yes, we had all of the right steps of what we needed to do to be able to get the information we needed to be able to manage that property. But it was not a great user experience. It did not instill confidence that I've selected somebody to manage my property, and now I can walk away and not have to be involved in constantly communicating back and forth. And so that was one of the examples of, we took multiple steps away to still get the information that we needed, but to provide a better experience so that they had that level of confidence in the management company that they are the authority and that they have what they need. They got what they needed up front. And now I'm not having to be constantly, it's like, I know when the end of the road is. I'm not constantly looking for when's the last thing they're going to ask me for.
I like that. Wow, what a great example. And you just helped me shift my thinking a little bit, because I've been in both of those camps before. And before you just described that, I was leaning more towards the, just make it as easy as possible for them to sign up, and then we'll gather everything else. But I've also, as you were talking, I remember distinctly at least a few examples that came to my attention, so I'm sure there's more than what I'm thinking of, where the owner was like, come on, man, like, why did you just created a job for me. I thought this was going to be a smooth process. And if there's one person that says that, 10 people were feeling that way. Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that you want to make it as easy as possible for people to say yes, but also give them that end point of, they know when their job is done. And so I would tell people, when we were bringing somebody on, when I was doing our business development, I would tell them, here's what's going to happen. Barb back at the office, she's going to send you out a landlord and property questionnaire. And to be honest with you, this is the most amount of time and effort that I'm going to require from you or ask from you. in our entire relationship. But we want to get this information from you so that we can properly prepare the paperwork to be able to professionally manage the property on your behalf, and so that we have designed our system for the hands-off landlord. And what that means is we want you to reach out if you have a question, but we don't want you to ever have to reach out, because you're going to provide us with all the information that we're going to need to make decisions on your behalf to manage the property on the day-to-day. Now, occasionally something may come up where we're going to need a little bit more input from you, but we don't want that to be on the routine stuff. So we're going to ask you to spend about 20 minutes providing us some information. Then we're going to type up the management agreement. And the moment we sign that, 24 hours, your property's on the market. We're doing showings, and we're going to get the thing leased up for you. Does that sound like a good plan?
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, I want to take a pause right now. If anybody's getting any value out of listening to me and Tony talk right now, would you please do us a huge favor? Tony doesn't know I was going to do this and interrupt the whole conversation. Would you please subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications? And also, please comment on this video and tell us where you've seen success in your property management company by removing something, reducing the complexity, simplifying, getting better through simplification. I have another example. Can I share another example?
Let's hit it.
All right. So within this last year, we were trying to figure out how to do maintenance. We got over 600 units under management. You know, the old saying is your business is perfectly designed to get you exactly what you're getting right now. And so we were thinking, hey, how do we design this to be more scalable? How do we deliver exceptional service in a scalable way? And so we were going with this idea that maintenance coordination was its own department. We wanted to have the property manager available to hold the trust of the owner, to manage the relationship, deal with all escalations, but we wanted a whole team of departments around the property manager that would support them so that they could be maximally impactful. And one of those was the maintenance coordination department. And I'm going to be honest, we struggled for 3 years to figure out how to have an effective maintenance coordination department. And then eventually, not my idea, it was my operations manager and my property managers. Eventually we said, you know what, next experiment we're running, we're axing the maintenance coordination department. Done. They're out of the picture completely. And we're going to change it. We've got 2 Rockstar field service technicians. We're going to hire a third, and now we're going to switch their role, and they are now the assistant property manager to the property manager. And now we have 3 teams. Call them pods, call them whatever you want. We have 3 property management teams in the organization, no maintenance department. It reduced a significant variable. It reduced something we were having a significant challenge finding the right talent. We were trying to employ overseas talent and just thinking that would lower our cost. And I'm going to tell you, our customer service went up dramatically. And the speed with which we could learn and iterate, and the number of errors that were causing problems that would then cause more time and stress and energy to solve those problems dropped like 80% within like 60 days. And now, with lower complexity, lower cost of resources, we now have a higher impact solution by removing something that wasn't working.
I think I'd love to circle back and do another episode where we talk about property management company structures and how to structure, because there's departmental, portfolio, and pods. And just over the last few years, I've really leaned heavy into the pod model, because one of the things that people talk about with some of the other, the challenge with portfolio is they have one contact, and that one contact has to be really good at everything because they're going to manage everything from that portfolio standpoint. The departmental, the complaint you hear is that they don't know who to talk to. Nobody owns the relationship.
Every time I call, it's somebody different.
Somebody different. And so I don't know who to talk to. Nobody owns that relationship. With the pod model, and especially the way that you just mentioned, having the property manager and then the assistant property manager, they're dealing with fewer number of properties. You're still taking, you mentioned if you took three pods and you have 600 doors, each pod in theory is managing 200 doors. But now, as a property manager and the assistant property manager, I'm only working with the relationships for those 200. I'm not having to know 600 properties and 600 different geographic, properties in different geographic areas. So I don't want to get too far down the path on that, but I'd love to circle back and have that as a separate podcast episode, because I think there's a lot of value in talking through the pros and cons of those three structures.
So I have a question on this topic that I think it's a parallel to this topic. When do you see, Tony, so when we talk about removing things from the picture, part of removing unnecessary things from the picture is by leaning out a process or doing automation or developing software so that the burden, like the requirement for employee touches, reduces. But where do you see that going to excess? Where do you see that going wrong? Where there's an overemphasis on efficiency and maybe reduction of touch points that then goes is there a balance here? Is there an optimal, like we're looking for a sweet spot? Or is it always like, hey, if you could reduce something, reduce it?
I think a lot of people that you mentioned Lead Simple. I know a lot of people get really excited about all the possibilities that you have with Lead Simple, and especially if you start adding in Zapier and all of the Zaps or Zapes or whatever, Zapier, however people pronounce it, I don't care. But adding in all of these extra automations to bring in other softwares and things like that. But when you really think about it, you have to be really good at your process before you introduce any software, any automation. And so I always encourage people to document that first, use a paper checklist first to work out your bugs, because what I see is a lot of people will say, well, I'm paying for this software, so why don't I just build out my processes in this software? And then they have one or two people that know how to build it out in the software. So now you're either being held hostage by that one or two people on your team, or you've hired a third-party consultant. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about people that have hired a third-party consultant, and now they hold you hostage because anytime something breaks, you have to hire them. So I know it's old school, and I'm okay with that. You've got to get really good at what you're doing first. You have to make sure that it's effective first before you can make it efficient, and you bring in automation to make it efficient. So for me, I look at start with the paper checklist or Google Doc, and start with that, and then slowly start adding stuff into the software, as opposed to let me just throw it all in the software, and then when something breaks, I don't really know how to fix it. So people are going outside of the process anyway, because that's how I encounter a lot of people that they have their process, but people don't go in and check the box when they're supposed to, and it doesn't trigger the next automation because it just becomes too complicated. So I actually think that automation and systemization can actually be a dirty word. I don't know, maybe not systemization, but definitely automation, because if you suck and you introduce automation, you just suck faster with less effort.
Yeah, you just automated all your suck.
Yeah. So what we want to do is really take a list of all of the things that we're doing, and I want to transition into one of the ways I think we reduce the actions that we have to take. Is I am a big advocate, and I know you and I have talked about this before, but we are the authority in the relationship with our clients. I know a lot of people get into property management because they come over from being a licensed agent, and they sort of just start building a portfolio. They've been selling properties, and they decide they're going to start managing them because they have an investor that says, well, I'll buy it, but I don't want to manage it. And because we want to sell, we say, okay, well, we'll manage it and we'll figure it out. And so people come over from the sales brokerage side, and in the sales brokerage side, the client manages, I guide the process and they make the decisions.
Yeah.
But in property management, it's reverse, right? They guide the process and I make the decisions. So what I mean by the guiding the process is, if I need their input, I will ask them for it, but I'm going to make all the decisions outside of that. And so if we can set up a system that allows us to have the authority to make the decision. Every time I reach out to a landlord to say, we have a refrigerator that went bad. It's 12 years old. Do you want to repair it or do you want me to replace it? If I don't have a default position to recommend where I've made the decision, this is what's in your best interest, I just want to, it's over my spending threshold. So I'm just honoring our contract and abiding by our contract and saying it's over our threshold. This is what we are going to do unless you tell us otherwise. If I didn't streamline that and say, if I don't hear back from you within 48 hours, then I'm moving forward with our default position because I'm going to manage the property in your best interest as you've authorized me to do in our contract.
We can't run a business. We have to agree. We can't run a business when something out of our control is a requirement to move forward. We have to take ownership of our property management business and have a contingency plan for the non-cooperation, non-communication, non-input of the other party on almost everything, with a few exceptions. We can talk about that in another episode. But I really love what you're talking about here. Now, I want to ask this question, and it's similar to the last question I asked. And by the way, today, if you just tuned in for some reason in the middle of this video, Tony and I are talking about how to make your property management business better, your processes be better, by the uncommon approach of reducing instead of adding to the process. It's the profit through simplification. It's the increasing service quality and reducing resource costs and reducing complexity at the same time. It's a very key way of thinking in order to build a scalable property management business. There's so many variables in our process. We have over 300 individual tasks that are recurring through the normal course of managing a property. Okay, well, maybe it's a worthy goal to think, how can I reduce that to 280 next year? In fact, one of our, coming out of our annual planning session, one of our goals is, how do we reduce the number of tasks that our property management teams have this next year by 20%? I think that's a worthy goal. It doesn't mean we're going to without sacrificing service quality. Either we combine tasks, or we move them to the admin team, or we eliminate them altogether. And the question I want to ask, Tony, is what kinds of things should we simplify and remove from our processes? And what's the end goal for that? And what things should we not remove from the process or do more of? Like, as we're simplifying and we're reducing here, let's not reduce the wrong things. In fact, let's do more of those things. And what are those things? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think what comes to mind is when we first opened the show, you talked about how many nuts can you fit on that bolt, and what are the different, and we still don't have an answer for it. So we hope that people comment, but how many different possible combinations are there? But think about this. If I'm trying to run a property management company and I'm trying to train people on my team, and I tell them, when this happens, there are three possible scenarios. And then from each one of those three possible scenarios, there's another three possible scenarios that happen off of that. So that just created 9 possible things that I need to train on. And so if I have a different way of working with all of these different clients, then it's really hard to scale that. But if I just say, when a maintenance order comes in, if it's under $500, if it's under $1,000, if it's under whatever threshold you're comfortable with, if I know it's the right thing to do, I'm just going to take that action. Instead of, I'm going to type up an email, I'm going to send it to the landlord, then I'm going to wait for the landlord to get back to me. Then they're going to ask me a question, then I'm going to respond with that answer. And so if we can eliminate the back and forth, still provide, I know we're both big on providing excellent quality service to the people that fit our target client, the people that fit our system. We're big on providing good quality service. I think defining that quality service, if you went to a 5-star restaurant, the restaurant they talk about in, what's the yellow book? Unreasonable Hospitality, I think is what it's called. If you go to that restaurant and you say, hey, I just want to have the best experience, they're not going to come back out and ask you, what kind of meat you like, what kind of vegetables you like. They're going to ask you a few questions up front, and then from the rest of the dinner, they're going to just take care of providing you with the right quality service. They're not going to come and ask you, how many ice cubes do you want in your glass? No, we're going to take care of you. We know what we're doing. And so the less input you get from your client or the resident, the better service you can provide, because you can use your expertise in a way that's repeatable and duplicatable and scalable.
Okay. I was only half paying attention because I actually have the answer to the math problem now.
Don't make me repeat that because
I won't.
right.
Okay, it is factorial. So if you have
Yeah.
6 bolts of different colors, you can have 720 combinations. That's crazy. You could put these different colored bolts in 720 configurations. If you move that up by 2 nuts on the bolt, guess what it goes to? It goes from 720 to over 40,000 different combinations. So if you have 6 pieces in a process, you have 720 permutations of that process. 8 pieces, 40,000, and it keeps going. So that's how important it is. So, and I'm going to answer my own question too, if you don't mind adding my flavor to that. I love this idea of like, hey, we know what you want. We know enough about your needs. You've empowered us to do a job. Let us do that job for you, and we'll try to make it as simple and stress-free as possible. Here's something I think that a lot of property management businesses have gotten wrong, and then they later went out of business and very publicly displayed their incompetence. I'm thinking of some of these big tech companies that we all love to celebrate their demise, right? So I think that to a fault, if we're talking about gaining efficiencies and reducing things out of the process, we are crossing the line in a very catastrophic, detrimental way when we start removing human connection from the process. In fact, I would argue that everything we do to reduce and remove things from the process should be the things that don't benefit from human connection, and we should make those as easy and simple as possible, and we should do more of the human connection pieces. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I think one of the things that is unfortunate with people using these task softwares where they've got step-by-step, 30 steps to renew a lease or 30 steps to whatever, what happens is we've trained people how to check boxes and send an automated email. And if there has to be any sort of human interaction, our team doesn't know how to respond to that because, well, I checked the box and it sent the email. I don't know what the email says. Matter of fact, I forgot to even change the template. I was supposed to change something or check 1 or 2 check boxes inside the little template. Wow. And I forgot to do that. So
destroyed trust.
Absolutely.
With 1 click.
Yep. And because we've taught them how to work the system in the software, we didn't teach them policy, right? Because if I know the company's policies, I can have a conversation on the fly with anybody about why we have a certain policy, why we took some action, and why the benefit or why the client benefits.
Can I interrupt and add something to that?
I think you did. So, so I think go ahead now.
Sorry, Tony.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick addition. You can't just understand the policy. You have to understand the thinking behind the policy. You have to understand the why behind the policy. I just want to interject that because that's really important.
Yeah, and I think that's we have to understand why we do something, and then we have to understand the policy of what we do, and then the process. The process is the step-by-step of what we do, but a lot of times people just jump right to, I have 30. I sat in my gold-plated office and I typed up a 100-step process that is the perfect process for my team. I shoved it down their throats and I said, guess what, team? I spent 6 months defining the perfect system. You are going to be operating this exact system for now until eternity. You're going to take every one of these steps in this exact order. And they didn't have any input in building it. They don't understand why they take those steps. The system breaks down. There's too many steps. I like to say the fumble is in the handoff. So if I build a system that is passing responsibility back and forth through that process, then there's a big chance we're going to drop the ball on something. And when we drop the ball, our team doesn't really know what we're supposed to do to figure it out because we didn't teach them the why and we didn't teach them the policy, and they don't know our core values or our vision or mission to be able to say, well, in absence of a step-by-step process to follow, in absence of me being able to click the next box, what do I need to do to help this person that's on the other end of the phone or other end of the email exchange? How can I use my wisdom to be able to serve them, to get them the result that they were looking for so that we can both go on with our day?
There's a very fragile a very fragile level of trust that exists between the accidental, unsophisticated, inexperienced landlord who is now a business owner and doesn't realize it, and their property manager. To the degree that we employ efficiencies to reduce touch points with owners that would have allowed them to build more trust with us and lower their stress level, we're actually backpedaling in some cases. We're actually building weakness into our process when we think we're building efficiency into the process. You can take that clip and put it in the front of the. I think that what I just said was pretty good.
All right. Well, let me give you a competing one, because I think this might so the battle of the clips. This might be one of the smartest thing that I ever said when I was running my property management business. Is I care less about what happens than I do about what happens when something happens. Meaning I know that we're going to eventually make a mistake. And I want to make sure that we try to figure out how to make as few mistakes as possible. But I care more about what we do when we make a mistake. And I think that's where a lot of management companies drop the ball. A client will be upset. Even if we didn't make a mistake, they think that something happened. Something didn't go as they had expected.
Perception. It's
right.
A perception.
There's a perception that we didn't meet their expectations. And so what do we do about that when they reach out? And a lot of management companies drop the ball. We have some of my best clients came from mild to major screw up on our part. And the reason they became our best clients is because when something happened, we were put to the test and we did the right thing and we passed the test, and that built the level of trust. So I'm not saying go screw up on purpose, but what I'm saying is when you screw up, the level of trust that you can create around doing the right thing, now they know, okay, these guys aren't perfect, but when they screw up, they take care of it. I don't have to micromanage them. I know they're going to do the right thing moving forward. And when they don't, occasionally when they make a mistake, it's okay. They've got my back.
To the degree that I'm going to echo what you just said, to the degree that we build processes and efficiencies and remove things from our system that distances us or our staff from the core impact we want to have, we're cutting down trees in the wrong forest. I love the example you just gave, and it makes me think of one of my industry heroes, Matthew Whitaker. Shout out to Matthew. That he says they own the outcome. You know, they own, that's one of their core values. They own the out. What was the outcome of this process, of this system, of the way that we handled this customer upset? Did it foster trust? Did it display great character and competence that fostered trust? Or did it dismantle trust? And blindly following some efficient process at the jeopardy of the client trust is absolutely moving the wrong direction. And so our topic today is how do we make things better by reduction, by removing things, by simplifying things. And I think when we make those decisions as managers, as architects of our businesses, we need to be very deliberate about the root of everything I'm doing here is to free up my PM's time, and so that they can have personal high trust relationships with our clients, because this is a customer service business. This is not business to business. We are not dealing with experienced, sophisticated business owners, and sometimes we architect our business with that assumption, and then we get really upset or really frustrated, or we miss the mark, or we hit a bottleneck because we're cutting trees down in the wrong forest.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So you asked me what I would eliminate, and what I would eliminate the most to have the biggest impact is input from our clients. And I know that can sound like, well, wait a minute, are you providing good service if you're not asking them what they want? But I think that's all about setting your really getting clear on your target client profile and really targeting them and having your messages and your systems and your policies defined to support those. So occasionally
100%.
Yep. So occasionally when you bring in the wrong person, well, it's not that I'm not communicating or providing a good level of service. They snuck in. They snuck through our system. Our mistake was not doing what we did 2 years into the relationship. Our mistake was letting them into the relationship
in the first place.
Right.
Yep. They got through our onboarding. Shoot.
Yep. So it's not that we don't want to keep them in the dark, right? It's about setting expectations up front and then delivering on those expectations. And so if I told you that I only served that we were a vegetarian restaurant and you came for a steak, you'd be like, yeah, let's not eat here. I'll go somewhere else, right? But if all of the sudden down the road, I say, well, I want a steak, and you're like, well, yeah, we're not going to serve that to you. It's like, well, you've been serving it to me, and now you've changed that. Well, you made it through the initial screening. We were doing something for you that was custom that we don't normally do for everybody else, but we wanted your business. So we were serving you that steak, even though the rest of our clients fall into this other category and are happy with the service we deliver as the vegan restaurant. So totally, I know vegans are a hot topic. So I know don't send any, emails or comments about that. But
my wife's name is Megan, and I've always joked with her, hey, I'm just waiting for you to go vegan so I can call you Megan the Vegan. So I digress. So here's what I think. At my worst moments in property management, I thought, if only I could if only I could simplify this business by completely eliminating the landlord, everything would be so smooth. And I think that's it's a tempting, dream, a fantasy to have, but it's never going to happen, and it's missing the point entirely. We are here to reduce the stress of the landlord so they can stay in this very lucrative asset class for decades, not years, so they have a fighting chance to realize the compounding effect that investments have that actually build wealth, and that takes over 10 years, my experience, my opinion. But here's something that I think is vital, and this actually came up in my recent management meeting. When you talked about reducing communication with the owner and some input or control from the owner, absolutely agree with that. We are now measuring, and I think this is one of the most important metrics, and I know some property management businesses out there track this, and we're going to start tracking it. We should be very carefully measuring how the volume of inbound communication from residents and owners. Because if I'm going to argue that if we're doing our job effectively, the volume of communication divided by properties managed will be continually dropping. Because nobody wants to call us with a problem, and nobody wants to call us with a complaint. And if we get good enough at our jobs, we will be getting better and better and better at about anticipating the stress points that cause people to feel like they have to reach out to us, and we will mitigate those with us calling them. There's a buddy of mine, Ed Drummond, here in Phoenix, Arizona, owns Capstone Realty, one of the highest rated property management companies in the world as far as I'm concerned. Phenomenal customer service. His premise is there's one rule. We're playing a game, and there's one rule in this game. If they call us first, we lose. I love that. He's designed his entire business and the way they think around calling the owner and the resident before they are ticked off enough to call us. And so I just wanted to throw that little tidbit in there because you talked about reducing the input from the owner. Well, yeah, they only feel like giving us input when they feel like they're questioning our competence and they need to rise up and take control. If we're doing our jobs right, not only will we have a policy and a practice and a system that makes that unnecessary, but we will also be hitting them with an actual human live phone call touch point. Pick up the phone, pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, this is going on. Didn't know if you knew this yet or saw the alert yet. Relax, I've got a plan for it, and I'm all over this. If you need me, text me, but I am on top of this. I'll give you an update soon.
Yep. So I want to go back to when we were talking about letting the right people in so that you can serve them properly. I want to confess on a couple of things. So the first one is we had a client that was upset, and I don't remember all the details, but they were upset that we had a $500 authorization limit. We had some repair that needed to take place. We knew it needed to take place. We knew that it was a reasonable price for the work that was being done. We knew there was no choice but to do the repair. So any conversation around it or asking the landlord, did they like it? It had to be done. So we took care of it. And somebody on my team got a call from them, and they were really upset that this action was taken without letting them know that it had to be taken. That person should never have made it through our screening process. They never should. They were the wrong fit for us, or we were the wrong fit for them. I don't care how you phrase it. We were not compatible in the way that they expected us to do business and the way that we expected to do business. So that's only half the lesson.
I want to argue with you about this.
Okay, we'll come back because that's only
Okay.
half the lesson. The other half of the lesson was that because of that, we made a knee-jerk decision to, as maintenance orders came in, to go ahead and be proactive and communicate that there was something that needed to take place, even if it was under our threshold. And at that time,
everybody? With everybody?
Yes.
You made
Yeah.
a sweeping policy change because of what you now deem to be a bad apple.
right, a bad fit.
Okay.
Good
Bad
person, probably. I don't know. I don't remember, but
Yeah.
bad fit. And so we said, well, we're going to be proactive. We're going to provide really good client service, and we're going to be proactive and pre-communicate that we're taking action on this maintenance item. And I can remember very clearly, this policy only lasted for a few weeks, because I remember very clearly I had a client that we had to, it was a really high-end loft that we were managing, and they had this pretty unique built-in microwave. And to my surprise, the microwave was going to be almost $2,000 to replace. We had an appliance repair person come out, and they said it can't be repaired. It's got to be replaced. It's custom built, put into these custom built cabinets or whatever. And I remember calling the owner because it was above our threshold quite a bit. And so I'm like, I'll handle this one because it's a unique enough, microwaves you can get at Walmart for $60. I got to call this guy and tell him it's going to be $2,000. So I'll take care of it. So I called him and didn't reach him, left a message. And I'm pretty sure I left 3 or 4 different messages of, hey, I got this situation I want to talk to you about. And he finally calls me back.
He's
and
like,
he
why
says,
are you delaying? What the heck's
he's
wrong
like-
with you?
Yeah, he's like, what's going on? I've been in meetings and I was traveling. And so what's so urgent? And I'm like, well, we have this microwave, and then I do all the explaining. And he's
What do
like,
you mean? That's what I
I
hired you for, man.
hired you to handle this.
Why are you bugging me?
Yeah. And he's like, if
like
you need
that
to
guy.
communicate, I have an assistant at my work. You can just pass on information. Just say, this is what we're doing if you need to, but I've hired you. And to be honest with you, because we were pretty selective in the market that we served, most of my clients were that way. That I had
Nice.
intentionally designed
Very
my
nice.
system for people that fit. They were the target market. And so what I want to encourage people to do is, if you're really clear on your target client profile up front, you can identify people who are a bad fit before they get in. And then you can eliminate these things that we talked about, this over communication for people who don't want that, because we'd already built the level of trust to handle things, and we reduced the level of trust he had in us by bothering him with stuff that he had already hired us to take care of.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think we're getting close to the end of this episode.
We are getting close. You said you
Okay.
wanted to argue with
Yes,
me on something.
I want to argue with you about something.
All right.
Maybe we see eye to eye on this. I just want
Okay.
to create a little spice for the sake of the.
For the algorithms.
Just sort of trying to foster some engagement here.
Yeah.
Join the discussion. Mark and Tony argue about customer service.
Yeah.
So the idea is, yes, when I had an argument with Peter Lohman about this. He's like, I can't go through 93 scenarios and talk to during the sales call when I'm onboarding somebody and tell them everything that we do and we don't do. And he's right. But we can talk about one thing, and this is what we do. We say we have we talk two things. We have high standards for the properties we manage. We expect you to meet them. They're way above the legal minimums. Number 2, we have high standards for the people that we work with. We want you to expect a lot from us. We also expect a lot from you. It's a two-way street, and I need support in 3 ways: process support, I'm not co-managing this with you. I've figured this out. I'm doing a really good job. I will run this business according to the best business practices, and we'll get you the outcomes of 95% occupancy, maintenance under 15% of annual revenue, and strong rents and renewing leases half the time. Let's agree those are the metrics that matter. Okay, I'm on that. And in total transparency, I'm going to show you that we're doing that. I expect support in my process so I can do that job for you. Number two, I expect support financially. If something needs attention, remember I have these high standards for the property, I need your financial support. I do not want to be put in a position where you can't replace an AC unit or fix a major roof leak because you don't have the proper reserves. I'm asking you to have 10 to 15,000 in reserve for this business. You don't have to prove it to me. You don't have to send me the money. I need financial support. Number three, I need emotional support. Call it whatever you want. Call it professional courtesy. But if we work together long enough, stress will be high enough that it might be tempting to swoop in and micromanage and possibly be critical. I'm telling you now, that's not the relationship I'm looking for. I'm in the ring. I'm in the ring, fighting the good fight for you, and I expect kudos and hand claps and like great job and not the criticism, micromanagement. Okay, so now I've identified the level of support that I need from them. But here's the point I wanted to argue with you. Because my operations manager makes the same point, like, oh, this person's a bad client. We shouldn't let this person in. We failed in screening. Okay, maybe, but maybe also this is the part of the journey. Maybe even though they've pledged their support, I read somewhere or heard somewhere one time that when there's a new CEO of a major company, that the board goes. It's not like a hazing process, but they run them through the ringer, he or she. It's like they're testing them. How are you going to handle this? Can you handle running this company? I read a book one time where it said, forgive me for bringing the husband-wife dynamic into play, but the thing was I don't remember the book. Actually, I do.
What?
I'm not going to say what it is. I remember
every
the book.
book.
No, I'm not going to
book.
tell. But I'm embarrassed to say the title of this book. So there you go. So
men are from Mars, women are from
Venus. No, it was different. It was different.
Yeah.
But it said that women sometimes are testing their man just to see if he can withstand the test, to see if they're safe with him. Okay, call me sexist, say, disagree with me or whatever. But here's the principle. I think sometimes when we're working with someone in what should be a high trust relationship, consciously or unconsciously, we test them and they test us. And so sometimes an owner, it has the burden of proof for their trust up here in the beginning of the relationship. And as we meet that burden of proof, and as we make trust deposits into the trust account, I want to see that burden dropping. So if they're in the first 6 months and they freak out about something, and I'm not immediately going to, this was the wrong client, we shouldn't be working with this client, I'm divesting this client. It's almost like you got 3 or 4 strikes with me. But when you're overreacting emotionally, what I'm going to require is that you listen to my view about how you're thinking this is a 7 and it's a 2. We're going to have that conversation. And then I'm going to ask you next time something like this comes up, not to think it's a 7 again, to think it's a 2 or a 3. And if you want me to deconstruct the process and every step that we took one time and show you the detailed case, and don't ever ask me to do that live or in the moment, by the way, because that's just extremely frustrating, inefficient, and you're just gonna whip up into more of a frenzy because I can't tell you exactly where everything's at right now. So, I'm okay if we step down into that sustainable drama level with an owner during that first 6 months to a year. But if we're year 2, 3, or 4 and you're popping up above that line, we got a big problem.
I can agree with that. I think, my point was when we look at somebody that's made it through our frontline filter, that they shouldn't have made it in and they made it in, I'm not looking to immediately, there's one strike, you're out, we're firing you, you're being unreasonable. But we either need to get them to where they fall into our systems and our expectations as everybody else, and then they just are a normal client for us, or they're going to wind up weeding themselves out. But I'm not going to change my system to accommodate them. I've been down that path too many times.
Doesn't work.
And I know it always ends in a brick wall going 50 mile an hour. It never ends well.
It goes from 620 permutations to over 40,000 permutations in the business.
Yes.
Or what do you want? Combinations.
Whatever. That's a good way to wrap this up.
Yeah. So get back out on the trail.
Yeah.
It's nice seeing you. This is the Tony and Mark aid station, property management aid station. You got your nutrients, you got your pep talk, you got your high fives from us. Now get out there and fight the good fight, and we'll see you again another 20 miles.
All right, we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.